What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chasers. Before I get started, I want to give a shout out to all of the members of the Green Gorilla channel. I want to give a shout out to Ronan Martin, Camp Low, Issa Abdul Zahir, Anthony Taylor, Deshaun Nolly, Ab Media 83, Aaron Lloyd, Leroy Honeycutt, MLR, Julius Ferguson, Charles Rogers, Black Dog, Brother Love, Ryan Jackson, Infamous Chillin', Randall, Universal 178, Black Sword 404, Rashid Barnes, Aaron Smith, The Walt Diddy Show, DH, She Truth the Revelator, Gold Professor, The Nameless Protagonist, Black Pill Ned Stark, Arthur Unknown, Odd Collard, Roderick Jackson, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, Damon Harris, Brian Williams, Kalanja Kala, Sherrod Martin, Ricky Dawson, NEU, Cedric Bowman, True 7360, BK Born Shaheed, James Washington, Hostile ADEV, Seven Coast Dojo, Shop Talk Live, WPR1, Rogish the Buildmonger, I Care, Force Windu, Lady Miss Thing Green, BGS Ibmore, and Marvin Battle Jr. Thank you for being members of the Green Gorilla channel. I appreciate that, and every little bit of help goes a long way. So today I have a guest on the show, and he goes by the name of Dr. Cleo Manago. He's an African-American activist and a social architect who coined the term same-gender loving, or SGL, as an alternative for African descended or black people who do not wish to identify as gay or lesbian due to the perceived Eurocentric nature of the latter terminology in community practices. Along with his activism, he is a blogger and a columnist. Dr. Manago rejects the terms gay, bisexual, and lesbian because he believes that they are white, Eurocentric constructed identities which do not culturally affirm the culture and the history of African descended people. Dr. Manago is also the founder and the CEO of Amasi Health and Cultural Centers and Black Men's Exchange, also known as BMX. Thank you, Dr. Cleo Manago. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. I thank you for coming on the show to have a conversation with me today and to have a honest and open exchange of ideas related to the kind of, the interactions that are taking place between straight black men and same gender loving black men. But I want you to give the audience some indication of who you are, what kind of work you did beyond me just explaining it myself. So explain to me, the kind of activism you've been engaged in and what you bring to the table for black men is different than what we're receiving now in relation to, this kind of war that's been constructed about straight black men related to same gender loving black men. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, before, this is my first time here. Thank you very much, brother, for inviting me onto the show and for this conversation. I have a question, though. Am I going to see you or am I going to be seeing you?
Yeah, you're not gonna see me, man, because legal reasons. And it's
Oh,
not. I don't want to be disrespectful. Usually, you would like. I could allow you to see me off camera on another occasion. We could talk behind the
okay,
scenes.
okay,
But
okay,
there's a reason why I'm doing this.
okay.
But
Well,
I
I'm new
do
here.
thank you. I don't want you to feel like you're talking to somebody who you don't have access to, because you know who I am. Okay, just by
Okay,
virtue of communicating and talking to me on Facebook. And so this is. I have to do this for a short period of time, but eventually I
okay,
will come from behind the scenes. So I don't want to make a mockery of you or the kind of work you're doing. Right.
okay. Well, I just was asking because it's my first time here, and I appreciate the invitation. All right. Well, first of all, I think it's important for people to know that talking about SGL issues is not remotely the focus of my life. I have been occasionally invited to talk about the issue, and it's in my portfolio, and it's something that I can address adequately. But it's not my agenda and where my work is based. My work is based in problem solving, trance breaking, and I'll get into trance breaking later in terms of what I mean by that, and doing work to repair and redirect the Black psyche toward Black problem solving, Black unity, and successfully deflecting the impact of white supremacy mythology, because it's a relentless war on the Black psyche and self concept. And my work is I'm a behaviorist, basically. And my work is around helping Black people to unlearn internalized oppression norms and baggage from the unresolved trauma that leads into us being actively involved in our demise instead of actively involved in our progress from parenting on out in terms of solution-based work. Um, because I can talk about same-gender-loving issues and I'm a same-gender-loving man, people will invite me to talk about that, but I talk about other things too that from my perspective are more important than just that. So I
Gotcha.
wanted to make that really, really clear because it's easy to get, particularly for new people who have never heard me speak before or who've only heard about me through a certain limited lens. It's easy to assume that this dude is SGL focused and that's what he's about, and I'm not. And at, I want to say to make sure it's clear that I am not a quote unquote gay activist. And as you already said when you described me, I don't abide by that paradigm. I don't think that paradigm, I can prove that that paradigm is destructive and not helpful to Black people. And it's another white supremacist trap, like the white feminist movement, and there's others, that keep Black people distracted instead of focused on repairing and resolving issues that are getting in the way of Black autonomous power and progress. So I want to make all that clear.
Okay.
Um, but I'm glad that you created the space and the platform to address this issue because things are getting worse. The agenda to split us and to attack Black men who are willing to be men or who are not in conflict with being men. And what I mean by that is men who are not trying to buy into other constructs of femininity and being female as a male, which this society I think is producing and encouraging for reasons that we may get into. And there's just a lot of misinformation on this that I think will be helped by this conversation. But
Okay.
I need to find out what you want to talk about before we can get into that.
Oh man, we could talk about anything. Like I mean, like this is like okay, so and then we can talk any way we want to also. So you don't have to be constrained by norms of respectability. If you feel like saying fuck that, or I mean, just express yourself however you want to because
I
this is the
plan to.
place. This is the plan. This is the place where Black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. The reason I wanted to bring you in was because I recently saw a meme that you posted on Facebook, and it was the meme of the cartoon character. It was a little white guy surrounded by Black women, Black gay men, white men, and just a whole host of people pointing guns at one person, and like the black man is standing there having to wonder why everybody's got the guns pointed or trained at him, right? And so the question then is, why do black men seem to be, as a member of an oppressed group? We know that black men were subjected to slavery. They were subjected to all of the gross injustices that in forms of violence that could be subjected upon black bodies during that time, including but not limited to sexual assault, uh, just flogging, whipping, castration, chaining, shackling. All kinds of abuses and tortures were enacted
Rape,
upon black male bodies.
rape
Okay,
as well. There was
rape,
rape.
yeah, rape, but that seems to be left out of the picture when you talk about black men and slavery. It's hardly ever mentioned. We only focus or hone in on the kind of abuses that women were subjected to related to rape and slavery. But beyond that, after slavery, then we are subjected to the black codes, then Jim Crow, and all of the horrors associated with that kind of experience, right? And that kind of institutional de jure racism, right? And so, having been subjected to all of that, and to then work in conjunction with black women, black members of the LGBT so-called Q community, and I'm using that because it's a popular reference and it's the language and the nomenclature that we normally use, okay? And
Hegemony,
so,
brother. Hegemony.
right, I get you, like narrative hegemony or cultural hegemony, right?
Yeah.
But knowing that we work with people who were part of the struggle, who love people of the same sex, and even though those peoples were to some degree marginalized, like Bayard Rustin was marginalized to a certain extent and wasn't able to step to the fore because he was a black same gender loving
Okay.
man. Okay,
You're expressing some thoughts, but I have to interject if I may. But I want you to not forget the train that you're on.
okay, go ahead.
Bayard Rustin, you got to remember. See, it's time to open up the canvas of historical discussion and be logical. And let me tell you what I mean. James Baldwin and Bayard Rustin were contemporaries. James Baldwin was out as a homosexual. He didn't identify as gay, and that's a whole other story. He never identified as gay or joined the gay movement. He criticized the gay movement in an interview in the Village Voice that you can go find and read on your own. But he never joined the gay ranks, even though he was asked to because of his profile. But my point is that James Baldwin and Bayard Rustin were contemporaries. James Baldwin was a friend of Malcolm X. James Baldwin was a friend of a lot of luminaries in the Black Power movement back in the day. So we need to understand why this homosexual who was out and this other homosexual who was not out, which is Bayard Rustin was not out, if you will, during his heyday when he was working along with King and when he was part of the logistics for the March on Washington. That was not an out homosexual man. He was controversial because he was getting arrested relatively often for lewd conduct in parks.
Okay.
All this stuff can be looked up and found.
Gotcha.
And the majority of his partners that he was, not the majority, all of the partners that he was found in the park having sex with were white men. So he was doing what's called social contraband potentially in two ways. One, being caught with white men, and of course his sexuality. But let's be clear, James Baldwin, because he was about black people, had more entree into a lot of Black Power discussions and Black Power meetings.
Gotcha.
So his marginalization, Rustin's, was not simply about his sexuality. It was about his associations as well and the lewd conduct charges.
Gotcha. So, I mean, in other words, he was engaged in activity, especially during that time, that were considered to be not advantageous for trying to move forward this civil rights movement. Especially since the antagonism that black people were receiving at the time was unparalleled. In relation to them trying to acquire civil rights, voting rights, fair housing rights, and so on and so forth. But go ahead, man.
And exactly, and there's a difference between fighting to get rid of bears to get the white people who you really want to be with, and fighting against bears to to acquire black power. I'm gonna say that one more time. There's a difference between fighting against racism so you can access where you really want to be because you have self-hate issues around white people, and fighting against racism to minimize barriers of progress among black people. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes sense. I get exactly what it is you're saying.
There's a
So
difference. It
yeah,
looks the same on the surface, but there's two agendas here. And Bear was fighting for access to white folks.
right. Access to white folks in a variety of different ways. In this instance, we can just be quite frank and say access to openly fuck white men. You know what I'm saying? Or be engaged in sexual encounters or activities with white guys. He wanted to be able to do that in a way that I don't know if it was based on self-hate or not. I can't speak into the personal motivations, desires, or anything of that guy. We can analyze that if you want to. But I mean, all I'm saying is it was much. Some people would say, and I'm glad you interjected and said that. But overall, my general thrust in relation to my train of thought was, well, damn, you know, black men's bodies have been subjected to abuse uh, ever since we've been here, man.
And we still are. I mean, all these murders that are much larger number than that makes the press of black men in particular, and black women, but predominantly black men being murdered right now, is modern day public lynching of black men being murdered and destroyed right in our face on video.
Exactly. And to me, yeah, and to me, it, of course, it's ongoing. But and what I always like to liken it to is crucifixion doing wrong, or public hangings in the rural South, or lynchings from trees. I mean, they're public displays of violence meant to intimidate and to create terror, or to cause terror within the mind of or the psyche of the person who's primarily subjected to that kind of phenomena. That's how I perceive it, right? So it's a form of intimidation and terrorism, right? Designed to keep people in their place or to let them know where they stand socially. Okay. Yeah. Now, but the funny thing about that is, it just seems like to me, and it's just frustrating as hell. So for black men to have been subjected to all of that, and then to work in conjunction with members of the black community who may have been same gender loving, may have been like James Baldwin, may have been like Bayard Rustin, may have been like, women like Sojourner Truth or whoever, to all of a sudden, immediately after the heavy lifting was done during the civil rights movement, and to then have white women introduce themselves into the civil rights discussion as members of a minority class, and then to all of a sudden become, themselves oppressed, even though they were part of the colonial project, part of the apparatus that subjected black men and women's bodies to violence during slavery and Jim Crow, then to all of a sudden have this alliance between black women who consider themselves to be feminists and white women, and then to be typecast as an oppressor yourself, and to now be at, like on the recipient end of claims that you are just as violent as, or just as oppressive as, a colonialist, slave driving, segregationist lyncher. It just seems like it's a false equivalency for one. Okay. And then for two, it is just not even acknowledging the current kinds of oppression that black men are subjected to at the current moment. And it almost seems as if it is a callous and morose approach to what black men are going through in order for people to gain boons, gain advantages for themselves within the context of neoliberal American capitalism. That's how I perceive this whole thing going on. Now, but because you get this link between black feminism and black lesbian feminism also, right? And this link between them and white lesbian feminism, then this whole conversation about heteronormativity comes into play. Then the whole conversation about, black men being oppressors because they're heteronormative and they want to have mononuclear families and be involved. Huh?
Brother, we have to laundry list this stuff so I can adequately respond to this profoundly powerful list of relevant issues that you're you're addressing, because I want to respond effectively.
Okay. So I know I'm saying a lot, but
Yeah,
yeah. So break it down, brother. Go ahead, man.
and I want to, so your audience won't scratch their head resulting from my response, respond directly to the issues on that list. And I'm requesting that I'm going to try to find my place in there and start with whatever comes to mind. But I want you to help me go down your list.
Okay.
So I can do it effectively and clearly. But what comes to mind is to remember that we live in a society and a paradigm that's anti-Black, and that's Black disruptive, and that's designed to keep Black people unstable psychically and self-conceptually. One of the things I do a lot of work around is my perspective is that Black people are in a white supremacy trauma trance. We are in trance. We're not fully present. We're not fully walking around with our eyes fully open and all our senses intact. Some of our senses have been shut down by going into the next generation of not addressing some issues that are relevant to Black people in terms of where we're tormented and suffering, and we're not addressing it. What we've done as a people in this society, particularly in the immediate era, is adapt instead of resist. So if we're adapting to white supremacy, we're going to be anti-Black, and we're going to be anti-Black male in particular, because white supremacy, which is a patriarchal construct, sees Black men as its particularly dangerous foe. So Black men get dogged out more than Black women in terms of what's done on the most frequently, because we're considered the biggest threat in a patriarchal context. And how that's relevant to what we're talking about is that Black men have only learned generally one way of being a man in society, and that's a patriarchal man. That's a man who looks at women as inferior or relatively subservient. Even if our souls don't agree with that, even if our family life with a strong female in the house, etc., is different from how we're conditioned, the bottom line is, whether it's unconscious or blatant, we're trained to be patriarchal and to talk in rape language about women, and to, like, for example, the Black Panthers, which was a very important organization, and there's then the Nation of Islam, and there's Marcus Garvey, where in all those organizations, Black women were relatively second class, and compared to the power dynamic. And it wasn't that it wasn't done like that because Black men are bad. It was done like that for the same reason we speak English. Most of us know nothing but English because that's what's given to us, and that's the only linguistic perspective and source that we know of. So that's what we speak. We can't break out in Swahili or some indigenous African language at random because we have no clue how to do that. Well, a lot of us are not allowed to naturally respond to who we are as people. We're trained to be a certain way, and most men are trained to see women as more likely for them to be able to control than anybody else, because women are in a position that they don't like. And that's where the womanist movement came from in terms of Alice Walker. Alice Walker came up with the womanist movement because the feminist movement, which Fannie Lou Hamer was offended by as well, was trying to get, first of all, it was racist. Just like the gay movement is racist, which is why James Baldwin joined it. The feminist movement was racist. And Black women tried to come up with womanists to find a Black context in which to talk about the real problem of misogyny, the real problem of women being marginalized. That's a real issue in a patriarchal culture, which Black men and women inherit. So what we're inheriting here in this modern day is the consequences of a festering tendency not to deal with our issues as a people, to adapt, as I said earlier, instead of engaging the state that we're in around being a diverse people who have men, who have women, who have naturally feminine men, naturally, and I should put that in quotes, naturally feminine men, naturally masculine women, who are who they are, who go through rejection and reactions because they're not doing what the training says to do. And we have Black men being treated like the pariah in all of this because we're looking at the consequences of many years of Black people not addressing some issues that we need to be addressing. So now you have a larger society, white folks, who are exploiting any kind of split that we have around being male, around being female. For example, all this stuff about, well, I shouldn't say stuff, that sounds dismissive. All of this talk about Black girls magic, Black girls vote, Black girls rock, that's a reaction to misogyny. However, it's being exploited by larger white systems like the Me Too movement, which is started by a Black person, but it's pretty much white. And they're exploiting the split because of racist reasons. But you have Black women who are so glad to have a voice, who are so glad to have a microphone, that they're not even acknowledging that they're participating in the dehumanization and marginalization of Black men by not creating an invitation to Black men to be partners with them while they do all this magic stuff.
Okay, so there's some things that I want to address related to what you just said, okay? Because right now, this show is about Black men in the Black manosphere, okay? And so we take umbrage with certain claims that are typically made about Black men historically as it pertains to their treatment of Black women. So one of the things we take umbrage with is this idea that, we are oppressors of women. We engage in misogyny of women. We dominate women. One of the things that we try to draw out or to tease out in this space is that a lot of times Black men, boys, especially after the 60s, okay, we're raised primarily in single mother homes, okay?
Right.
And we're not taught that women are supposed to be in subservient positions. Most of the time, women are in positions of power over Black boys' lives, such that Black boys expect or come to see Black women as natural authority figures. So from the time that they're, infants up until the time that they, part off or partitioned off from their mothers and they enter into daycare and then the primary education system, they're basically under the authority of women, right? And then this kind of authority, continues as they matriculate into secondary education and even into, college education and their experience in the job market. So one of the things Black men in the manosphere, we articulate is that we seem to be, for all intents and purposes, surrounded by women who have more power than we've ever had. Now, I can't speak to what happened before, the 60s. Now, I myself, I was born in 71. So I'm a 70s baby, okay? And we, in the manosphere, and I think, I always like to keep it exactly 100% real. So one of the things we say is, yeah, Black men very much can be misogynistic and sexist. We can hate Black women all goddamn day. We can call them bitches and whores and all kind of shit and be mad at them, whatever the case may be. But in relation to institutional power, to control Black women's lives in such a way that we have institutional power over the family, we say we don't have that kind of power over the family. In fact, we're marginalized from our children's lives in ways that are harmful even to the children and to us, because men, one could argue, are most successful. They flourish and they thrive primarily when they are able to have a robust and a substantive impact over their children's lives. Then we also say, in relation to government, we don't have any institutional power there. Economics, no institutional power there. Education, no institutional power there. So everywhere we turn, we see other people empowered, particularly in the, as I said before, the most substantive way that men typically tend to perceive themselves as being functioning and flourishing and thriving is in the context of a family. But now we don't have a context to the family. We're not, I mean, we're pushed to the periphery of the family, and heteronormativity and mononuclearity is perceived as somehow being oppressive in and of itself. So these are some of the things we want to push back against. Now, We know there are black men who are sexist. There are black men who are violent. There are black men who exhibit pathology to black women. And those are things we don't deny in this space. Okay? But one of the things we also like to do is we like to mention the ways in which we are vulnerable as well. Not only to white society, but to women as well, black women, black mothers who oftentimes beat their children in ways that they should not be, right? Black women who sexually assault young boys before they become, of a consenting age, or domestic violence. Black women also engage in these activities, but it seems like every time you turn around, we're the only ones who do these things and contribute to these kinds of pathology. Now, we don't in this space lie about our contribution to these problems, but we don't want to be scapegoated and perceived as the only ones that are engaging in these kind of activities and perceived as, the only, etiology, the only causality for these kind of problems. So this is what we're just trying to work out, man. And I'm glad you're here to have a conversation. I am, for real. Now, let's take a quick break, though. I just like to give people mental breaks. And we're going to come right back, and I want you to be able to respond to some of the things I said. All right? So we'll be right back. One quick second, and then I'll be back with my guest, Dr. Manago. Thank you. All right, we're back. I'm the G with a PhD. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla Channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chasers. I'm joined here today with Dr. Cleo Manago, an activist, a scholar, a clinician, if I'm not mistaken, also, right? Who works with issues related to white supremacy, uh, same gender loving politics, but not primarily. It's ancillary to what he does, but primarily works with racial issues and how black people can deal with those cognitive issues. Okay? So at the current moment, we're having a conversation, and I'd like to thank you, Black Quizzer, for having become a member of the channel, and Counselor Murray for the donation. Thank you all. I said a lot, and so
Yes,
I want you
you
to
did.
respond. I'm sorry, man. Hey, look, I talk a lot of shit. I run on, but
And I'm here for it. I just want to talk about it in a way that's going to be helpful, which
okay.
is why it's attempt in terms of communication, because I get what you're saying. It's almost sometimes more effective in terms of communicating with the world to do it with what do you call those things? Well, I use the word laundry list. Though there are better words, but let me try to address what I remember out of the whole list. And if something is missing, which something probably will be because it was such a long list, please bring to my attention because I want to address all of that.
Okay.
But one of the things that keeps me controversial is I argue against the concept of black male privilege. I don't agree with that concept. I think it's BS. And I don't think that black males essentially have privilege in this society. And so I've been in arguments with so-called feminists, and I've won most of them because I know what I'm talking about, and I can bring facts in to back up that that's a problematic concept, given all this that you just broke down regarding what black men go through, particularly that very offensive idea that black men are the white supremacists of the black community, which you might have heard before. It's like, how are you gonna make the most victimized, murdered group of white men claiming that the black men are them? That don't make no sense.
But one thing, dings. Every now and then you might hear some sound effects. So if I agree with what you're saying, I'm gonna give you a ding. If I think you're on some bullshit, I'm gonna be like, wrong answer. But I mean, it's all in good fun, man. Like
Okay,
I don't expect for me to agree with everything you say,
I don't.
and I don't expect for you to agree with everything I say. But I think we should be having this conversation. But I
Yeah.
do agree with what you just said, so let me give you some dings on that. Go ahead, because we don't believe in black male privilege here either. Go ahead.
But what I want to mention was that, see, you're a researcher, a scholar, an inquirer, someone who's literally made it a life's work, and part of your academic pattern is to go get the information. And you probably instinctively knew some things, and it probably was exacerbated or affirmed by what you had to learn as a scholar. So you know a lot of the data. A lot of people in our community are otherwise occupied. They're doing other things. So they don't have the critical analysis and the information that you have regarding what we're really going through. All a lot of black males know is that they feel vulnerable, they feel terrorized, they feel untrusted, they feel encumbered, they feel stigmatized. And sometimes what people do who are not given permission or the space deliberately to attend to feeling that way is act out.
Yeah.
And there are black men in our community who act out the feelings of failing the patriarchal contest, because white men have created a patriarchal frame of reference that looks pretty impressive if you don't have a critical analysis. And there's some black men who attempt to replicate that, including the violence, including the dismissiveness of black women as equal partners. And like I said, when you listen back to this show, you're going to hear very early in the show me say something along the lines of, despite the real experience of black boys and black men in terms of women having power, authority, and influence in the black household, the black community, despite that, when they grow into society itself, and when they watch TV itself, there's another influence coming in that's more toxically patriarchal than their real life experience. And as a matter of fact, they're made to feel bad about having so much control under the wings of women, and that they're not men. So some of them make up for that, and this is all unconscious. This is not as deliberate as the laundry list of issues that you just raised that we actually go through. A lot of us don't know the list. We just know that we feel a certain way that we don't even understand that either. So there are brothers who act out toxic patriarchal behavior in marginalized women. And that's why I mentioned, or objectify women. That's why I mentioned Elijah Muhammad, who did it, Marcus Garvey, who did it, the Black Panthers, who did it, who made sure that most of the people who were in power and who were stepping up to be the face of the Black Panthers were black men. And black women were in there doing powerful things. But most of the people that we know historically, in terms of being our quote unquote leaders, quote unquote, are men. A lot of people don't know about Ella Baker or Fannie Lou and these other people. And it's not because black men designed it. It's because there's a larger patriarchal society that tells black men that you're already not good enough. So we think about being men in ways that are not necessarily helpful to black women. And as I said earlier, we're not having any conversations about this. I mean, one of the things that's happening here, which is relevant to this so-called SGL conversation, is relevant in that we're being split all kinds of ways. That meme that you saw, I didn't make the meme. I found it somewhere, and I forwarded it to my page. But black people are being torn apart as men with women, as same-gender loving people in the rest of the black community, Democrats and Republicans, light-skinned, dark-skinned. There's a major campaign in the United States and in the Western world to get black people not to look at other black people as lovable and as people they should partner with. We're being trained now to chase white folks. And the majority of the imagery in media and every place else is saying, be with somebody white, not with somebody black. So my point in raising that is that we're being trained to be split in all kinds of ways, and we're not facing it.
Okay.
And this whole thing around same-gender loving men and heterosexual men and men who are in between, so-called bisexual, et cetera, is an important conversation that I want us to get to. But I want to talk about the fact that that split is all part of an external agenda. For example, everywhere you look right now, and I'm sure you must have seen this, everywhere you look right now, the issue of transgender is being talked about. You can be
Oh
talking
yeah,
about
yeah,
you can talk about
yeah.
ketchup, water bottles, and hamburgers, and somebody's going to find a way to put transgender in it because there's a larger macro organization or paradigm, which is white and is called LGBTQ, who has the power and the omnipresent connections to control how conversations occur in the society. Then you got black people, and this is part of where the split occurs. You got transgendered black people who have never had opportunity in the black community context to even exist. And for there to be a rational dialogue around their existence, so they go to white supremacy for sanctuary, just like there's black women who go to feminism for sanctuary, because from their perspective, they hadn't had any black identified space to rationally have a dialogue around how they feel. So they run to white racism called feminism, called LGBTQ, and use their map to critique black people. So you have black people who are calling themselves transgendered, who are too whitewashed to understand, okay, wait a minute. Black people have a problem with me because I'm a man, or I was born a man, and now I'm saying I'm a woman. And black people have dealt with the literal castration of black men in our history and the emasculation of black men in our history. So logically, given that trauma and that historical reality, I can see why they're looking at me sideways. Because I'm not saying this is how they think. I'm saying this is what they don't think about, which is
Right.
they just go into a white paradigm which has no consideration for none of our history, none of our nothing. Just call them homophobic and make them bad, and call them transphobic and make them bad. Your own people, based on our narrative, because it's so white and racist. What black people actually go through and the circumstance of being black in this context is never part of the equation or part of the consideration. Just attack other black people. The same thing in terms of what these women are doing, black women, who are having a good time being seduced into jumping on the black girl magic bandwagon and blah, 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 and enjoying this moment in the light that white people are exploiting and giving black men no play, and then having the nerves to imply that we don't need no play because we have black male privilege. And I always say to them, okay, so we have the privilege to be murdered in your face on video, and don't get started with the other men that didn't make no video, which outnumber the men who are on video. The unemployment issues, the tormenting issues that you already made a list earlier here that black men are going through. How in the hell are you going to call the black male experience privilege when there's a body count that we all know about because of cognitive dissonance and white exploitation of the divisions they have successfully put in place across gender, across sexuality, etc. You asked me to talk about the SGL heterosexual divide, so I'm going to get to that real quick. But I hope what I just got finished saying makes sense because it's all relevant.
Yeah, okay. So let me just retrace the steps and repeat some of the things that you said, so that we can be sure. Because some of it I agree with, some of it I didn't agree with. Okay.
Good.
But ultimately, what you said is that.
And I want to hear about what you disagree with. I want to hear about that.
Well, I agree with you what I do agree with you. Okay, I agree with you about the fact that there is no such thing as black male privilege. So we can match up on that. Okay, give you a ding for that. Because I don't. I know this is silly, man. I try to keep it, comedically light to a certain extent, because these are some serious, heavy ass issues, man. And even if we don't agree, we still need to hash it out and talk and have conversations instead of trying to run from each other and kick the fucking can down the road until it becomes nuclear. That's not a way to deal with these kind of issues and these problems.
That's why I said I want to hear the agreements. That's why I said
okay. That. So I also agree with the fact that a lot of times oppressed groups of black people run to white people in order to redress their grievances within the context of these kind of issues. But that's not productive or helpful because these people don't have our best interest at heart to begin with. So I'll give you a ding on that. Okay. So also I'll give you I'll give you a Funk Master Flex bomb on the issue of, and that means I agree with you like a whole lot as it pertains to the issue of black trans women running to the white LGBTQ community to accuse black men of being engaged in, this transphobic, misogynistic, hate rant about black trans women when there is a history of black men being emasculated, being told that the way that they embody or represent manhood is not good enough because there's some savage niggers, uncivilized coons who can't step up to the plate and perform the way white men do in relation to being rational, being moral, being functional within the context of Western civilization, right? So I give you a thumbs up on that. And I recently did a video on that. And look, here's my deal with this issue, right? I don't think black men have a problem with people doing them. Maybe there are some black men that do have a problem with it, you know, because I'm not going to say that there is not, some strangeness, the way, black men see this performance of sexuality, right? However, at the very time when it could be argued that it's necessary to have black men be strong, masculine in order to pose some sort of resistance to this violent system. The very idea that the way that we are supposed to react to it is to be, more feminine. It smacks against common sense to a lot of black men. It's like, what the fuck do you want me to do? You want my wrist to become limp now? You want me to start wearing bustiers and shit in order to respond to this? This would be progressive to you? Like, what? The idea that black men cannot be martial or cannot pose a self-defense threat to violence, to me, just seems oxymoronic. It seems ridiculous to me that black men can't respond in that way. In every culture and civilization that black people have had, there have been black men who've been, and I use the word martial. I know that's a reference to Rome and the Greek, the Roman god Mars. But what I'm saying is that in every pantheon of black gods and goddesses, there have been warrior male gods. Right?
But see, you're being logical and rational and factual, which has nothing to do with the people that run this country, and they just want control. I mean, for example, when Trump became president, that was based on a scorched earth desire to put white supremacy with power behind it in place so white people could make up for the anxiety they felt around their alleged superiority when Michelle and Barack were in the White House. And there's all kinds of compensatory things that they did, not because it was logical. I mean, the only reason that Trump lost recently was because of COVID-19, and the downturn and the uncertainty in the economics in this country that impacted everybody so badly. They wanted a way out of it, and they didn't see it through Trump because Trump was not successful with COVID or the economics when the downturn came. And even racist white folks said, "Wait a minute now, this is getting ridiculous." Not that they didn't change, and they still white supremacists, but it became structurally difficult for them to be running behind Trump, so he lost. So my point I'm making is that the people who are making these decisions that you're talking about are not coming from a place of rationale when it comes to black people. It's coming from whatever we got to do to be in power. We're going to do what we have to do to be in power, including getting black people to think in irrational ways, like you just described, that to be powerful is to put on a dress. Well, even white people don't necessarily agree with that, but it's a successful tactic that these transgender people think they're the ones running things when they're being run. They're being used, and they have. This is the part where black people need to take a look and be more strategic. It's easy for black women to jump on the anti-black male bandwagon enough for it to have a meaningful effect, a meaningful negative effect. It's easy for black people who are same-gender loving to jump on the racist LGBTQ train or the feminist train, because black people on a macro level are not having rational dialogues about this stuff.
Okay.
So while there's no demonstrative black narrative around these issues inside of our community for black problem solving, there's an external narrative which is irrational when it comes to us, talking about black male talking about black male privilege, talking about black people being transphobic because of a man don't want to wear a dress. He got a personal problem. You don't got no personal problem because you don't want to wear no dress, but that's the white narrative.
Yeah, that's some bullshit. That is some absolute, like, it's just like calling Dave Chappelle regressive because he didn't want to be forced or coerced into performing a certain form of sexuality for a group of white folks who wanted to basically see him basically tap dance to their music, to do whatever they say. You know, like.
But the point I want to make to you, brother, on that issue, and I'm glad you brought up David Chappelle, is that because black people, I want to make my point, because black people on different types of level of blackness are not inviting or initiating our own conversation on this black complexity, white people are writing the script. So when Dave Chappelle says, look, I ain't putting on no dress, the linear, ignorant, historically inconsiderate, meaning not considering our history, perspective is that he's being patriarchal. He's being transphobic. No, he's not. He's saying, I'm not going to be castrated. And I'm not going to volunteer to be castrated. And I see you trying to give me $50 million to be castrated, and I'm not having it because I have enough of sense of myself as a black man, both contemporarily and historically, not to go out like that. And that's a rational perspective as far as I'm concerned, but it doesn't fit into the feminist, which is white, or the LGBTQ, which is white, paradigm, because black history, black context, black perspective is not in there. So when you got a black community which is not informing black people, which is not creating opportunity to engage these issues, not informing black people around these issues, they go to whiteness and white people control them.
Yeah, so we got a
rational perspective, and it's not rational.
So here we got a guy who's basically saying the heteros are obsessed with gay folks. Now, this is just one of the people in the comment section. I want to address it because it seems relevant to me. And then Slater Boy, 18, then he says, who is saying these things? Men are not being pushed to be gay. And he's talking about hetero people, I assume, right? And so, look, the media, ever since second wave feminism, has increasingly thrust images of same gender loving, LGBTQ, homosexual relationships into the public sphere. This is purposeful. This is not something, when the media makes decisions to show images on a fucking screen, they're doing it for a reason. Whether it's in a 30-minute slot, an hour slot, whether it's in a series, a movie, whatever the case may be, whether it's in a magazine, because all of that space is bought and paid for. It's deliberate. So black men at the very same moment that they're being told that they're regressive because they're homophobic and transphobic, and then all of a sudden being thrust, being immersed in a sea of images that tell them that there's something wrong with you because you abusing us. Yes, that's a problem for straight black men, because we're looking at the shit like, wait a minute. We didn't ask for all this fucking attention being directed our way. You're bringing this attention to us. You're saying that you're being abused by us, that you're being subjected to psychic harm by us. At the very same time that historically, black men have been raped. Heterosexual black men during slavery were raped. Castrated, literally had their penises and balls cut off.
Guess what? Black heterosexual men are still being raped.
Oh, for sure.
Now.
For sure. Yeah.
Because through drug-induced situations that are encouraged by circumstance, and that's another whole thing that I can get into, through prison.
Right.
Situations, being coerced and forced into situations sometimes even when they're innocent. We know about the Innocence Project and how many brothers who've been let go because of DNA. And there are circumstances that are leading right now to black men across the sexual spectrum who are in sexual situations or rape situations where they wouldn't be otherwise if it wasn't for the consequences of oppression right now in today's era.
Right.
So I want to make that clear, but I want to also respond to something. I forgot the comment that you just put on the screen, but I want to say this. And I'm being redundant to make a point. That brother who just spoke, or sister, I don't know what they are, is likely a same gender loving person. You said, and I'm paraphrasing, you could say it better than me, that black men who are likely or assumed to be heterosexual didn't choose all of these crazy things that are being put on them, and there is a war on them based on something that they don't necessarily feel like they deserve. Now, let's put this in context. I want you to think about this. Now, again, I'm a same gender loving black man all my life. I don't buy into the LGBT paradigm at all for reasons already stated. It's a white supremacist, racist. It's the homosexual division of white supremacy mythology. So I'm not into it, and I don't promote it, and I discourage black people from joining it. However, I am from the black community, been living in black spaces and black cities and black contexts all of my life. I'm clear as a bell that the black community almost never, on a macro level in particular, creates an invitational space to discuss the existence of same-gender loving people as part of the black collective. So in the presence of there being no invitation to let's really discuss this, and let's discuss anxieties and concerns, there's churches who call folks abominations. There's fathers and mothers who want their child to be a certain way, who spank them or beat them or chastise them for being, quote, too feminine, or for not acting like a man, quote unquote. And there's torment that same gender loving people or people who are not necessarily same gender loving, but who are not willing to operate from a hyper masculine performance in society, who are oppressed for that. And not oppressed in a minor way, called punks, faggots, got sugar in their shoes, sissies, sissy boys, and all of that stuff for same gender loving people has deeply scarring and hurtful impact. So when you have this first, second, third, and fourth generational silence of the existing of same gender loving people in a black context, and then you have white gays providing a racist invitation for liberation along these lines, then you have black people, not me, but a lot of other black people rushing over there for some liberation around being who they are because they don't find it in their own community. And they ignorantly, and I'm going to break down why I call it ignorantly in a moment, blame all of this treatment on heterosexual black men. And I'm going to say this and ask the same gender loving person who I'm assuming to be same gender loving to deny this, if this is whether what I'm getting ready to say is true or not. See, the hatred of the alleged hatred of allegedly heterosexual black men is irrational and so focused that it doesn't tell the truth. For example, most same gender loving black men, and David Chappelle, for some reason, knew about this and addressed this in one of his comedy routines, do not like being in the presence of transgender people and do not affirm transgender people. There is a major split generally between male to female transgender people and homosexual black men. They don't hang out in the same places generally, and there's not a lot of respect between those two communities. And one of the reasons why black same-gender loving men and gay identified men don't support transgender people for the same reason that heterosexual men allegedly don't, because of these concerns around gender representation. And you don't hear about that. You would think that it's a bunch of homosexuals over here or transgender people over here who are together supporting each other while the heterosexuals attack them. That is 90 million miles from the truth. And if you watch David Chappelle's routine, he talks about how in this context of homosexuals, bisexuals, etc., the transgender people were on the outside of the car. So what I'm raising here with you is that, getting back to things not being real and not being logical, is that it's a lie to claim that the majority of the people that attack trans people are heterosexual black men. That's 5 million miles from facts. Matter of fact, from my own research, heterosexual men ain't think about these people. They're truly heterosexual men are not obsessed or occupied with what homosexuals are doing or not doing.
Hold on, hey, I got to give you a bomb on that one, because this is the shit that I'm talking about, right? Because like on a day-to-day basis, the thoughts about what trans women are going through, or what black queer men or black gay men or same gender loving men are going through. It's not on my fucking brain. I'm just
No.
trying to keep it real with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just like, if you want to know the truth, you got to be able to understand the truth.
Right.
The
But see,
reality is we're not thinking about you. I mean,
right.
and maybe one of that, maybe that might be the problem. Okay, namely
No,
that.
that's not the problem, brother. The problem is we're not having conversations about this. So there's a lot of ignorance going on. Again, the white gay community is creating the authors of the narrative of black people are just so homophobic. Black people are just so femophobic. Black heterosexual men are fucking with you. And there's black men who feel that way because they don't have the big picture perspective. And a lot of the men, and I want to make this clear because this is going to be a rare comment to hear in the universe. As I said earlier, most black men or any men who are truly heterosexual are not waking up in the morning going, I wonder what the homosexuals are doing today. I wonder, they're not doing that. A lot of these men who are being accused of being heterosexual, who are obsessed with homosexuals, are not heterosexual.
Woo! Hey, wait. Oh, I think you about to hit on something that's about to fuck them up here. Wait a minute. So, in other words, let's get to the. I like to get to the root, to the bottom. They say fat meat ain't greasy, but they a damn lie. Cause fat meat greasy all goddamn day, every day. If a motherfucker is preoccupied with tripping about your gayness, that motherfucker probably gay, man. I'm just gonna keep 100 with you.
But there's another issue that's a lot more. You're hilarious. But there's another issue. I'm making you laugh.
Hey, man, hey. I just got to keep it 100. Like, motherfuckers don't want to tell the truth about. Look, I'm sorry, Doc. Doc, I told you, this is the Green Gorilla channel. We keep it straight, no chaser here, man. To me, go ahead.
But there's another issue here that's a lot more poignant and troublesome that never gets talked about, along with the whole complete laundry list of issues that don't get talked about, which is part of the equation, which is not funny. And I know you agree that it's not funny. And did you see, what's the name of that film? Damn it. Well, hopefully the film will come to mind before the show is over.
What was it about?
It was a film about this brother who was in the military, who was really angry, and Denzel Washington played Antoine Fisher.
Okay, yeah.
In the film Antoine Fisher, they showed, which is very rare, a black woman molesting a black boy.
Ooh-wee.
And that his anger and his rage that was so difficult for him, he wound up having to go to a therapist, which was Denzel Washington's character, to help him navigate and heal through his trauma. Well, how that's relevant to this is that there's a number of black men who have been molested by a male, who have not had space in their lives to properly acknowledge it and address it and resolve the trauma of that assault, who look at all homosexual men as devils, as threats, as rapists, as a problem, who are also anti-homosexual not because they're homosexual, but they're obsessed with it because they were raped.
And see, that's something we don't talk about in the black community.
That's what I'm saying.
We don't talk about it. And look, it happens. Look, let me just say this. And one of the things we have to be, as scholars, that we're responsible for, is to use data and to use objective reality as a means by which to help guide public opinion about social facts and ethical issues related to people in our communities. We can't just use ideology devoid of any empirical data or content, or deal with the reality that there's pathology spread all over the black community. And until we reconcile the truth with our ideals, we're going to continue to be mired in bullshit as we continue to try to talk about these issues. So one of the things we have to be cognizant of, again, Black men are molesters. Black women are molesters. Black men are abusers. Black women are abusers. And and and
Absolutely.
and, and, and but see, this has been my problem all along with white feminism. Okay? Because what it did was it came in and created this polar or this dichotomous way of thinking about pathology and oppression and domination, and it borrowed it from Marxism. Okay? So the idea you got the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, you got the oppressed and the oppressor. Okay, and that the oppressed class is eventually going to, they're going to band together and they're going to do all that they can to throw off the yoke of domination and oppression by means of getting rid of false consciousness and alienation and all these other kind of, philosophical, abstract ways of resisting. But what they did, what they have done to me, is they just created more dichotomies and they haven't actually resolved the real problems. We can't create dichotomies. We have to look at the phenomena that's occurring, and we need to try to find public health approaches and psychological, psychiatric approaches to mitigating it.
That are culturally steeped in Black experience and history, not Freud and not Jung, which is the primary paradigmatic creators of what's called psychology in this country. We have to follow Francis Cress Welsing more than we do Jung.
Oh shit! Hold on. Did you just say Frank? I'm gonna give you a bond for that one for saying the name of Francis Cress Welsing.
Oh, I love Francis Cress Welsing. You can bomb that again or whatever that sound effect is, because right, she was goddess level in terms of her genius, and she was marginalized because of it. But
you know that there are going to be people who are going to argue that Dr. Francis Cress Welsing was homophobic.
Well, I wish they've argued with me. See, look, don't get me started. Well, I don't want to. Okay, that can create a whole nother tangent. I'm gonna just say this. I don't necessarily have that perspective, but my point is that even if she was so-called homophobic, I'm not so insecure that I'm gonna throw everything about her out the door because she doesn't agree with everything about me. It's not about me. It's about Black progress and Black mental health and Black repair and Black critical thinking and Black people becoming functional and advanced as a people and as a phenomena. It's not about whether she likes me completely or not. If you or I went down the lines of our family, we're going to find family members that we don't agree with and that we might not even like, but we love them because they're our family. You know what I'm saying?
I get you.
So I don't need Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, given all the riches that she brings, to be absolutely wonderful. And it's a contradiction for her to be rejected by gay identified folks because they're going into a white supremacist racist community instead of going to Dr. Welsing. It don't make no sense.
Okay, this the fucked up thing about, look, you just hit on something that we got to talk about. I can't give you the bomb for it because we ain't get deep off into it just yet, but but I'm gonna give you the bomb in a second though, because I give it to you. Here's why. Here's why I'm gonna give you the bomb right there. Because these same motherfuckers, look, and I'm gonna have to call them motherfuckers right now. Hey, bro, this is my channel, man. I say what I like, okay? So here's the deal, man. How you gonna tell me that you fighting against racism, but the next thing you know, you married to a white motherfucker? Wait, wait a minute. Hold on. It done got to the point where right now you got Black women who consider themselves to be at the precipice, at the cutting edge. Black feminists who are at the cutting edge of emancipatory activity for Black people, right? But at the same time, out of millions of Black folks, you can't find a Black motherfucker to love? No, but you can love who you want to. Okay, let me just say this. You can love who you want to, but it just seems odd to me that you this close to whiteness, but at the same time, you got all this vitriol and animus for Black folks, particularly for a specific kind of Black person, namely the straight Black man. This shit, it befuddles my brain. It hurts my soul.
Well, for your information, that same phenomenon happens among same gender loving / gay people as well. And the reason I say / gay because gay is a mentality and a paradigm that some Black people have allowed, who have been coerced and traumatized into adapting. So that whole phenomena of rejecting Black people and running to white folks for sanctuary and intimacy happens a lot in that community as well. As a matter of fact, all the famous homosexual people that you know, Don Lemon, Wanda Sykes, Lee Daniels, that dude on that show called Pose, I forgot his name now, but almost 100% of the Black gay identified people that white people promote and who they select have white partners. But in my opinion, and there's exceptions to everything, you said people can love who they want. Well, then I had to think about Tina Turner, who also fits in this category, who's running around behind a white man as well. As a lot of interracial relationships have nothing to do with love. They're not love relationships. They're the same kind of phenomena that resulted, if you watch a film that you might have heard of by now called A Girl Like Me, where she recreated the doll test. And the majority of the Black children who took that doll test from the 1930s up until the 2000s chose the white doll. And in many cases, this is adults choosing the white doll, and it has nothing to do with love. It's pathology.
Oh, man. You know what?
Now, there's exceptions to everything. You know, because human beings are human beings when you get past all the constructs. But in a white supremacist society like ours, most interracial dating, when Black people are with whites, it's an anti-Black impulse. It's not based on love. And when I was an undergrad, I did a research project on this, which is another story and another show. But no, it's usually. I mean, first of all, that's what, like I said. Let me back off of that. But one of the things that I want to reiterate that we talked about, which is more on the topic, I said earlier that most heterosexual men are not occupied with what homosexuals do or do not do. But some of these men who are heterosexual, who indeed are occupied with it, have been raped or molested and have not been healed or properly resolved the profound trauma and interruption of that experience, and are not admitting it, and have made themselves the leaders of the anti-homosexual Pan-Africanist movement when they a rape little boy acting out their personal issue, making a movement out of it.
Wow. And so hold on, say that again, because I missed that. I'm listening, but damn, hold on, wait a minute. Go ahead. No, the reason I say that is I think a person like Africa Bambaataa or somebody like that, you know, who's been accused of having had sex with young boys.
I'm talking about people who have successfully operated optically in heterosexual drag, and who are actively really might have been heterosexual. It might be heterosexual, but they have some homosexual rape trauma that they have not resolved in a proper therapeutic context.
Okay, I get it.
And they're acting like they're the great anti-homosexual activists, and they can't stop talking about it, which is not Bambaataa. This is a few other people.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, I missed it. Okay, so in other words, you're saying that one of the biggest secrets in the Black community is that Black boys are being raped, and they're not coming out and getting therapy related to it, and they're taking out the trauma of that experience out on other same gender loving people, because they really they can't reconcile the kind of trauma and the harm that they've been through as youngsters.
Right. And they are indeed obsessed.
I don't know. I mean, you know, we have to find out the number. I mean, that's a research project that needs to be engaged in. Okay. That's a research project that needs to be engaged in.
I'm talking about specific people as well. One of them was found out, and I'm talking about Eddie Long. Eddie Long used to initiate parades of his parishioners down Peachtree Avenue in major streets in Atlanta, actively against homosexuality. And the whole point of his parade that he initiated after Sky Blue on his own, because of his own fruition, was to let the world know that homosexuality was wrong. And after the damn parade, he went and found some boy to have sex with. So his perpetual obsession with talking about it being wrong in a public forum was to disassociate and to actively create the mirage of him having nothing to do with it through these parades. And he was obsessed with the issue because he didn't want to be found out interpersonally or publicly. Okay. That's why I say you cannot talk about these issues purely from a logical perspective, because we're dealing with even white supremacy mythology. I always add the word mythology too, because they are not supreme. But even white supremacy mythology is really a vicious, lethal reaction to an inferiority complex.
Gotcha. So you know, so basically, when black people retreat to white people, it's classical conditioning predicated upon their own imprinting of inferiority, right? The white supremacy tries to inculcate black folks with, namely that they're not good enough, they're not beautiful enough, they're not smart enough,
that came from white people,
virtuous enough.
That purely came from white people, all right?
And some of this is connected to even sexual desire and sexual value and worth, and sexual self determination.
It's the eroticism of self-hate.
Damn, that's deep, man. See, I personally wouldn't have come up because I don't do same gender loving, psychoanalysis.
That was not a same gender loving psychoanalysis. That was a black community psychoanalysis.
Right. Okay. Well,
there's heterosexual people and same gender loving people eroticizing white supremacy mythology and anti-blackness.
And see, this is odd to me because I'm a straight black man, and on a day-to-day basis, I don't think about SGL. I don't think about trans issues. I don't think about gay issues. And I have never been molested. You know, my experiences with gay men or men who are same gender loving have not been negative. They have not been coercive. They have not been pathological. They have not been assaultive in nature. So when I refer to it, I have nothing there that I see this evil, innately problematic. I'm like, if that's what you like to do, do you? Well, I'm not here to interfere with what you're doing, because I've never had it come to my way in a pathological function. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's not on my radar. It's not on my radar. Go ahead.
Well, the point I want to get you to understand, and your viewers to understand, is that I'm being redundant to make a point. The black community, in all its variations, has not had a rational black community, black history, black experience informed discussion on these issues. So the side effect of the silence is festering, and you got all kinds of stuff happening now that the white gay community is exploiting. That is the result, in terms of its success, of black people not creating a platform in the black community to actually engage these issues. And the ignorance about what's going on is also embodied by homosexual people. For example, there's homosexual people who have not faced, who don't realize that a lot of the people obsessed with homosexuality, who come up with these attacks and can't stop talking about it, are indeed homosexual themselves, and it's dissociative behavior, or they're rape victims who have not processed it in a way where they're healed and fully present. That's why I call it a trance, because their people are not fully present here. They're operating on 4 gears instead of 6 gears available to them because they're traumatized to just 4 of them. And because same gender loving black people, as well as everybody else in the black community, have not deconstructed all of this, there are a lot of feminist identified black people and feminized or queer identified black people, which I think is sad that black people call themselves queer, but who are looking at black people through a biased anti-black male, anti-heterosexual in terms of implication lens that's completely wrong and completely false, or overly wrong and overly false. That's why I brought up what's his name, Eddie Long, because before Eddie Long got busted, there were same gender loving people or gay identified people. I make the difference because SGL people who identify as such are have a lot more critical analysis, which is why they stepped out of the gay paradigm. So I want to separate the two because they're very different. But a lot of gay identified people who saw Eddie Long were offended by his homophobia. And I was telling people that I was in private conversations with that no, those are not hate crimes; those are self-hate crimes.
Okay,
And there's a difference. There's a difference between self-hate crimes and hate crimes.
Right. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to have you come on the show is this is the place for, I say it, the Green Gorilla Channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chasers. I said that. I didn't say this is a place where straight black men can come. I said it's a place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chasers. So whatever you feel like, because after all, you are a black man. Okay?
All day long.
I mean, but we got to have these conversations, but these conversations are not being had. And when they are being had, they're being had in a very policed way. Like, fuck all that policing. This is not fuck the police around here. You know what I'm saying? So if you fucking with the police, get your bum ass out of here. I'm gonna say, fuck you. We don't police it.
Well, not only are these conversations happening in a police way, they're almost always happening as constructed by the LGBTQ community. So it's biased and culturally wrong from the gate. And there cannot even be a functional conversation between black people because you got black people talking about trans lives and LGBTQ and queer and attacking black folks that call black people homophobic through a white supremacist prism. And then you got a group that's historically oppressed, that's terrorized, called African Americans, who are also dealing with symptoms of oppression. And they're acting like you're the oppressor. I'm talking about the heterosexual people with no consideration of the torment that all black people are going through, siding with a white paradigm. That ain't gonna work. And that's what I'm trying to get same-gender loving people and black folks who are caught up in the LGBT or in the trans paradigm to understand that if your conversations are rooted in whiteness and not considerate of the black experience and black culture and black historical context, it ain't gonna work. But what's gonna happen though, and what always happens because it doesn't work, is they say, well, black people are homophobic. No, black people are intrinsically white supremacy phobic. Yeah. But it's not a articulated phenomenon. So everybody stays in chaos, and we don't do any problem solving, and we better, because things are going to get worse, man. These splits between black men and women. I mean, now that who I call Obama, but her name is Kamala, is in the White House with her white family. All that whiteness with a so-called black woman in the presence of it, along with the media constantly showing black women with white men and black men with white women, that phenomenon and the white doll chasing as adults, it's gonna get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, along with the other things that are festering because we won't have these conversations that we have to have, and we're not having them.
Yeah. We need to have these conversations, regardless as to whether or not we have total agreement or consensus about the conversation. Right. We need to have the conversation. So let's put the conversation on hold, though, for 1 minute. We're going to go on a break again. And then after this break, we'll come back. And I'm going to tell you what I disagree with what you said earlier.
Please do.
We got to talk about that. But a lot of what you say I agree with, though. So let's just go to a break real quick, and then when we come back, we'll finish it out. Okay? All right. All right, everybody, we're back. I'm the G with a PhD. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chasers. Today I'm joined with activist, clinician, Dr. Cleo Manago, and we're having a discussion about black men feeling cornered and attacked by same gender loving LGBTQ and gay, trans black
By
men.
gay identified black people, SGL men would not ever attack you. So
Okay.
see, this is a difference. SGL is an intentional frame of reference that is more thoughtful and considerate of black experience than gay.
Gotcha.
It ain't the same thing. An SGL brother, like I have never and will never attack another brother for not being SGL, simply for being heterosexual. That's insane.
And that's the problem that we're having, right? So this is the problem that I'm a straight black man, and this is the things that the thing that kind of it gets to me, right? To know that like everywhere I turn, I find life difficult. And then on top of that, to be told you're no better than a white man, or that that you're misogynistic, or you're transphobic, or it's like, first of all, I'm not thinking about you. Second of all, most men are not abusers and rapists, although they're characterized as abusers and rapists by definition by patriarchy theory, okay, or black feminist theory, and
which is really white feminist theory with a black face.
Correct. That's how I think about it. I'm saying that's the race dial test all over again to me. It's like, okay, now you're gonna choose to ride with these motherfuckers? I'm just saying, these the same motherfuckers that had your ass tied to a bed in Master House. Now all of a sudden they're emancipatory. Now I can understand it only in the context of, okay, there's a movement in which white women have been able to hijack the gains of the civil rights movement and to take them for themselves. So like Bill Burr said on Saturday Night Live, okay, you got a group of white women, they swing their Gucci booted feet over the fence of oppression, and now all of a sudden they're able to become the most paramount demographic that's able to take advantage of affirmative action hiring policies. They're the group that's able to start new businesses and get funding, small businesses and get funding based on MRE, minority, contracts and things like that. And black men are like, okay, we get prison. We get death on the streets. We get stigmatization from our own community now, to where we're also told that we're regressive, in the same way that like white women are supposed to be attacking white men. Now we got black women attacking black men. And it's like, hold on, I thought we were partners. I thought we were in this together.
If we don't have conversations, it's going to, mark my words. I predicted a lot of things, including this particular split we're talking about many years ago. And it's going to get worse, because nothing corrects itself when it comes to behavior, culture, enculturation, and hegemonic influences naturally. They don't naturally correct themselves. They have to be corrected.
I get it.
And we're not doing it, and we're mad at each other for reasons often that are not even clear in terms of why we even have the conflict. Which, of course, if you don't know why you have the conflict, you can't resolve the conflict. Like I said before, to make my point, a lot of gay identified black people who think they should be mad at heterosexual black men are really mad at homosexual black men who are acting out disassociation, or men who have been raped, who have not gotten proper guidance or therapeutic support around healing from that wound. But these gayified, is what I call them, people are looking at these people with no consideration of these things through a flat white lens, which is not considered black experience. And then you have black conflict that white people indeed come in and exploit. For example, in Baltimore, where I have an office, Baltimore is 70% black. The first sign that they put in Baltimore with this passive Black Lives Matters mantra, which I consider a passive mantra, asking white folks to let us matter, different from never again, which Jews have, which is not passive. Anyway, the point I'm making is the first people to get a Black Lives Matter sign in the street was transgender. And I said, wait a minute, how are you going to put the Black transgender lives matter sign in the middle of a street where more Black people who are not in that category die every weekend, and you prioritize this population, which is not even facing an epidemic, because 10 local cases compared to over 1,000 other cases among Blacks is not an epidemic. However, white gays are controlling all of this.
And see, this is the problem that I have, right? And we've broken the data down. We know that every year there's approximately 250 Black men who are killed by the police and the number gets higher when you talk about vigilantes, right? Or people like Zimmerman or whatever the case may be.
And it gets higher. It gets even higher when you talk about domestic murder, which is what these transgender situations supposedly are.
Right. But
these are not police shootings, supposedly. So, so when you get to all the other categories, you're close to 1,000.
Right.
Compared to 7 people who were killed in Baltimore.
Right. So I don't know the number. All I know is when I see the numbers on transgender people, right? I see somewhere around 30 to 35 people killed per year. Just alone, just transgender deaths alone, for whatever reason. It could be police, it could be domestic, it could be whatever the case may be, right? Then we see Black women in relation to being killed by police related to Black men, right? You got 9 to 10 every year related to 250. So you got 20 times more Black men dying from this phenomena than you do Black women, and almost 100 times more than Black trans women. Okay?
That's right.
But and I'm not, every Black life is precious. Every Black life needs to be preserved and upheld and treated with dignity, respect, and so on and so forth.
But we're talking about the brainwashing, though. I mean, for example, I was asked to speak early this year at a Ivy League school that has a decent amount of Black instructors, and I was a guest speaker to speak to the faculty. And my agenda was to talk to the faculty about using the academic experience there among Black children or Black young people to teach them to value Black life, to value the idea of using their academic experience and degrees to help Black people like all other groups do for their people, and to not just become generic Americans, but become academically trained pro-Black people to help advance the Black collective using their toolbox. That was part of my discussion. This Black woman got up, and I could see her being antsy and irritated, because she was literally right in my vision among everybody. And she was really bothered by my presentation. And I knew she was a gay identified woman, because she had the cliche, stereotypical lesbian look with the hair and the shirt and the pants and the whole thing. And she also had rainbow flags all over she had rainbow flag earrings and the whole thing. So she got up, and my point here is brainwashing. This woman was a PhD. Not that I think PhDs are immune for anything, I really don't. But anyway, I've been mentioning that just to make a point. She got up and she said, well, your presentation, a Black woman, your presentation is interesting, and I see some value in aspects of it, but you're forgetting someone. Now, one thing that you might find interesting is that people who I meet for the first time who don't know me, the assumption is that I'm heterosexual. Right. So that's what she assumed. So she said, these things are interesting, but you forgot someone. And I knew she was coming from it. She was a cliche. I knew what she was doing. I'd seen it before. It wasn't nothing new, but I kept it to myself, and I wanted people to witness this interaction. So she said, you forgot someone. And I said, who? Well, you're forgetting women, and you're forgetting the queer community. I said, when did I do that? I said, last I looked, people like you are called Black, and you look Black to me. And Black people are my focus here, and you Black, so you're included. This is not a genitalia-based discussion. It's a Black-based discussion. So what are you talking about? You're not excluded. I didn't say black men. I didn't say black heterosexuals. I said black people. So what are you talking about? And I didn't say it like that. When I interact with black people, my body language is purposely neutral and uncombative on purpose, because we can't go into what I call trauma regurgitation. We have to deflect trauma. So I'm very neutral in my body language. I'm also a 6 feet tall, dark skinned black man who's not trying to be a woman. So that already makes people question my validity. But anyway, I'm letting you know that I was different. I'm being more visceral now than I was then. But anyway, I said you're included. But this is what she messed up. She already messed up when she said that. She said, well, trans women are being killed every day. Again, I kept my composure. I said, okay, well, we're about 75 days into the year. So based on what you just got finished saying, Scholar, there should be 75 trans people dead. But that's not the truth. I said, use your phone now and let's look up how many black trans people have been killed. And at that point, it had been 9. I said, that's not a daily event. I said, now let's look how many black women have been killed in the last 75 days. Let's look at biological women. Let's look at how many biological black males have been killed in the past 75 days. And we looked at the data. I said, that indeed is every day. What you just got finished saying about transgender people, it's not every day. That's an exaggeration. And I said, my point here is that even on the PhD level, there are scholars so well indoctrinated by white agendas that we believe mythology that's not even true and claim to be scholars.
And let me tell you this, and I'm just going to say this because I say it over and over and over again. I think that the reason that you hear adherence and like strict adherence to these principles about, well, what about the marginalized? What about the other marginalized? What about so you got the black marginalized umbrella, but then you got all of these subaltern groups, or what they call subaltern publics within the confines of blackness itself, which is supposed to compound or be additive in relation to how much more oppressed they are in society, and they're rendered invisible. You can't see them, but their plight is much worse than that of the black masses. And there may be some ways that is true, but it may be ways in which that is untrue. You get what I'm saying? So this all comes to the fore, I say, when you get the Combahee River Collective, which is the precursor to intersectional feminism. Okay, so with the Combahee River Collective, you got a group of black lesbian women who ultimately are following and patterning what they're doing after radical white lesbian feminists at the time, who started lesbian communes and decided we're going to crush the patriarchy. We won't have shit to do with men, right, at all. We're going to take all the girl children and live in these lesbian enclaves where we don't have to deal with these fucking asshole men who are trying to tell us what to do and to control us, blah, 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 okay? Now, what they did was they came up with the idea that there's heteronormativity, there's sexism, there's racism, and there's classism. And that these all work together. They're interlocking systems of oppression, and they all work together to impede black women's lives, okay? The people who belong to these, these various identity groups within the context of the framework of black women, right, seeking emancipation. Okay, so now we're at the point where ideologically people are committed to perceiving oppression in this way. This is their main lens, the primary paradigm, discourse, narrative, whatever you want to call it, framework. This is the way that they perceive oppression, and they don't want to come out of it. They don't want to listen to other people and narratives. They don't want to greet with other people and be open-minded. It's almost as if they lack civic virtue because they're dialed in, they're locked in, like a target, to their own narrative.
Right, but it's not just virtue. They're literally affirmed and awarded, because white people understand how this division plays into their perpetuation of power by keeping everybody else in chaos. They are rewarded. And even Kamala was just rewarded and chosen among a group of other black women as by Biden as, in my opinion, the most white accommodationist one that he had to choose. But the point I'm making is that there's women who are enjoying their time in the light given by whites, and they're getting affirmed and money and like, what's her name? The scholar out of Rutgers. What's her name?
Brittany Cooper.
Brittany Cooper. Mm. Brittany Cooper is and others are getting time on TV and name recognition, things they live for and fantasize for, or that this society values as being what you do when you're relevant. And so, in my opinion, white people, the reason that we hear from Cooper sometimes and Lil Wayne and others, as opposed to Tommy Curry, who's a scholar and a brilliant genius on these issues, is because white people don't want to have rational people who can break stuff down and make it understood among the Black masses to have any primetime coverage, because they need us to be in this chaos that we need. And that's
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but you just dropped the bomb when you said Tommy Curry. They want Lil Wayne there. They want Lil Wayne and Brittany Cooper there. They don't want Dr. Curry there.
Which is a contradiction, because Dr. Curry, you and even I have gone through the gauntlet that allegedly makes us legitimate scholars, blah, 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 and we should be able to be addressed as opposed to a Lil Wayne. But Lil Wayne is a strategy, and picking certain people to have the limelight are strategies. Just like even at MSNBC, a lot of people don't realize this, and I'm not hating on Joy Reid, but I want to be real clear. Joy Reid gets to be what she is because she has a whole nother African-based experience outside of the African-American experience, outside of so-called ADOS, which creates less anxiety among whites because she doesn't have the American slavery residue in her energy. So her impulse doesn't come from, it's not like the other Black people who were there who kept white people more on their toes around how to deal with them. She's in a whole nother cultural space as a half continental African and half Caribbean. And a lot of people don't realize that's why she's there. They won't have somebody there who has another experience. They got rid of him. Matter of fact, right before Obama had his last day, they got rid of all the so-called African descent, people of African descent of slavery out of the media. People like Tavis Smiley and the rest of them. So they're very, very strategic. And Black people are not going to win until we're equally strategic. And right now we're chaotic.
And this is why I believe conversations like this are important. And because they're trying to divide the Black public and scatter us and balkanize.
They're not trying to do nothing.
Well, you're right. They're doing it. Okay. And they have a plan, and they continue to exact the plan. And we're falling right into it. And this is the thing that I think is bad about identity politics in this, in the way that it's being played out within the African-American community amongst feminists and people who consider themselves to be these Black radical LGBTQ activists, right?
You're not radical.
Well, they think that they're radical. I mean, all they're doing really actually is using these oppressed categories in order to gain their slice of market opportunities. I mean, like this, it'd be different. And I said this on a show that I did the other day. They're not using these identity categories in order to create revolutionary change.
That's right. Not at all.
They're using these identity formations to gain positions that already exist within the basic structure of the society in which we live. So they're not trying to change the basic structure of society at all, by any stretch of the imagination. They love the basic structure of this society, even though they argue the exact opposite. They're not trying to change the capitalist structure, the corporate structure of government. No, that's not what they're doing. And
they're also contradicting the allegation of being against white supremacy because they're steeped in it paradigmatically, and they're acting out on Black people. What the hell is counter white supremacy to that? If you're acting out on Black people, you are assisting the mythology of white supremacy. But all these attacks on Black men are straight up assisting white supremacy agendas.
And see, the thing is, But the funny thing about the Combahee River Collective, the first thing they say is that, look, we don't want to divide ourselves from black men in the way that white women have decided to divide themselves from white men. That's not something that we want to engage in as a practice. And that's what they say in this document. But I see them belying their own initiatives, their own objectives in this regard, because they say they want to work with progressive black males. But it seems like to me at the current moment, the only way you can be regarded as a progressive black male is to be an effeminate black male, to be a trans woman, or to be, a limp wrist, wet noodle kind of flopping around in the goddamn dish bowl. Okay.
Now wet noodles is a attack, but everything else I get.
Well, I'm not trying. Well, the reason I say that is because
James Baldwin, who did some incredible things, his noodles were kind of wet too, if you will. But
look, I'm not. Look, all I'm saying is, and I can see how you can perceive that as a dig, so I'll take it back. All right, so I'm not trying to dig at effeminate black men. I'm not. But this is what I'm saying, right? Same gender loving does not have to take the form of being effeminate and being anti-violent in relation to being subjected to violence. It doesn't have to take that form.
But the issue is not, and we probably should have a part 2, and I'm not ready to go nowhere, so I'm not saying I'm out. I'm just saying this. We should have a conversation about constructs of femininity and masculinity later. Because have you been to Africa yet?
I have not been to Africa personally.
Okay, well, I go to the continent all the time. And if you saw how black men generally show up in terms of their style, you will be, a lot of people in this country, based on this frame of reference they have here, will assume they all were effeminate. Not all, but many of them were effeminate or even same gender loving, which is not even the truth. It's just they don't have the post-slavery hardcore black male performance, hyper black male performance. That's really a performance that occurs here, that's embodied in the hip hop culture and things like that. That African societies that are less influenced by American society don't even have. Now, of course, that's changing because the promotion of this culture's issues and performances is being pushed in Africa as well. But my point to you is that you can go to downtown Lagos or downtown Accra and see 2 men walking on the street, literally hand in hand. I can show you film footage of it because I took some, because people don't believe it, and arm in arm, and very effective. Not necessarily because they're homosexual, because many of them are not homosexual, but they're very effective. And in this society, it looks like so-called homosexual behavior, and it is or effeminate behavior, and it's just human behavior that crosses a whole spectrum of expression. But in this country, because of the castration of black men and the demanization, or as Dr. Curry would say, no man isms, black men are trying to compensate for that with a industrial strength black male performance that defies any so-called feminine traits, which is not even natural. Because
So we definitely got to break that down because, to some degree, I can understand how, that, like, if people don't have these kind of sensitivities, then they wouldn't be so on guard to protect their masculinity. That's is what you're saying.
That's right. Based on a construct, based on a larger macro construct of what a man is.
But we got to come back to that. We definitely we have to have a conversation about that, a whole nother 2 hours or whatever the case may be about that, just about that. Yeah. Because here's how I think about this, just to give you some insight. But we can't spend a lot of time on it. But here's my intuition about it. Right. Sure, I'm willing to agree that to some extent, black men, especially if they come from harsh environments, are kind of hardened. Okay. Now, how much of that is related to performance, which is like this Butlerian term related to post-structuralism and post-modernity? I don't know how far off that rabbit hole I'm willing to go down, right?
I'm not coming from that place, by the way, but I'm familiar with it.
Okay, so, and true, I will say this. Whatever culture you live in, to some degree, you can't get out of it. I mean, this is like you can't get out of language, or
Yes, you
say,
can.
well, put it this way: you can't totally eliminate it. Like I can never totally eliminate the way I think about the English language, even though I can learn another language. That's still going to have an indelible print on on the way I think about the world, right?
Right,
So
but it's one thing to have that print and analytically realize what you just said as a fact, which makes you in control, as opposed to it controlling you.
right, so this is what I'm dealing with here. So this is the nature versus nurture argument, right? Or the culture versus the natural argument, right? Namely, or in philosophical terms, we call it disclosure one and disclosure two. If you're talking about, because I do philosophy, that's my what I have a degree in. So the idea is that okay, so you're thrust into the world, and long before you're able to have an impact on the world has already had a deep impact on you. So I mean, all the way up from your formative years, like we're talking about kids who, like you talked about the dial test. This is like 3 to 5 to 9 to 12. They're already influenced in ways unconsciously that they don't even know about. And this is what philosophy is important for, because philosophy.
That's because of their parents too.
Oh,
Because
true.
you can transform or provide critical analysis capacity to a child, even along the lines of these issues at a very young age, if you had an intentional agenda to make sure that you impacted behavior in ways that help Black people. And that
Oh, for
be
sure.
Jews do it, Asians do it, all kinds of people do it. We just here adapting instead of resisting.
Right. But notwithstanding all that, all I'm saying is that especially if you're not being proactive and you're not mitigating it with value or axiology is what what the black nationalists of old called it. Like we need a realigning of axiology as opposed to just being like a log in a sea of popular culture, and we have no way of resisting against it whatsoever. It's like we're being led to and fro. We're like lemmings. We follow whatever is the trend
And
in
we can
popular
resist.
culture.
I gotta
Excuse
say
me.
it. We can resist. We can do a lot of stuff, but we can.
We do resist. We do resist.
Well,
Okay.
some of us do, not all of us.
But I think we had a better opportunity and a chance to resist before the proliferation of the kind of media that we have now. It's right now.
But we had white Jesus though. That got in
Boy,
the way.
that's a hell of a drug too, though. Boy.
That got in the way of Black people taking seriously protecting Black life as a norm. That was a serious weapon of war.
Oh
White
yeah.
Christianity. That's still a serious weapon of war and distraction, and that gets in the way of Black people taking care of Black people as a matter of practice.
It's funny though, because as I trace my own intellectual roots to get to where I am now. I mean, I rejected white Christianity. I went to a Catholic grade school, man. All we saw was white Jesus. We went to mass. We ate the body of white Christ and we drank the blood of white Jesus. But by the time I graduated from high school, I was like, "Fuck this shit. I don't want to have nothing to do with it." I was already off of that. You know what I'm saying? Because I started reading. I was hyper religious. I was like Calvinist in relation to my religious expression, because I'm like, damn, I got to be among the elect. Otherwise, my soul's going to burn in eternal damnation. How can I be among the elect? And then I realized that white people were playing this game whereby they made themselves the chosen and the elect. And I was like, man, fuck this. This is some psycho babble, some bullshit. You know what
Yes,
I'm
it
saying?
is. It is.
And then I came, but I always was a reader of science fiction and fantasy and mythology. And then I got exposed to African mythology. I was like, damn, this shit is better than what I've been, like it's not exactly the same as Greek or Roman mythology, but you get tales of supernatural tales of Black folks. Then I went to college, I studied philosophy, but at the same time I read George E. James, I read Theophilo Benga, John Henry Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay, but the times were different than they are now, because even hip hop was more progressive back then. I mean, it was regressive in some ways as well. But I mean, shit, we had Self Destruction, BDP, Public Enemy, Paris, X Clan. I mean, you had a whole bunch of different groups.
We also had KSR1.
Yeah, that's what BDP. That's what I mean when I say Boogie Down Productions, KRS-One. So you had all of these groups, and Tribe Called Quest. You had black affirmation as opposed to just kind of like what I consider to be coonism right now. You know, the trap, the get the bag culture, the you know, the I got gold teeth galore, and you know, it's just a different culture though. It was different, right? Um, so reading this stuff was cool, and you know, learning about black culture was cool, and coming to understanding about black as opposed to white cultural paradigms was cool. But now it's just popular culture. It's just it's we wore a hat like the hat you got on now. Them the kinds of hat we had the African medallions, you know. We had the sweatshirts, you know. But now it's just like guys are just they wearing Gucci and shit. We wore the Gucci shit too though. We wore the fake Gucci though. We didn't have the real Gucci. We was Dapper Dan in it, but at the end of the day, I'm getting superficial now. But
well, one of your watchers said something that I just want to reiterate. They said that everything is a construct, and that's true.
Well, I think that some things are constructs. I think some things are constructs, and I think some things relate to nature.
Well, that would be a wonderful conversation to have with you one day, because of course some things are going to the bathroom, eating, crying when it hurts. Those are definitely natural things, but a lot of how we see the world is not natural. And as a person of African descent, it's really unnatural because we're literally trained to self-destruct. And self-destruction is not natural. And defending your people as a way of life and being and understanding the importance of self-preservation as a cultural practice is natural. And that's not a natural or a normal occurrence in most black spaces. Even you just mentioned about how rap music, et cetera, was more conscious, but it was also crazy stuff happening simultaneously to that to keep us in place and not too sent off into affirmation by the affirming rap. There was all these other things too that was going on by white supremacy, who strategized the whole thing to ensure that we would not wind up loving ourselves. And I hope, and you know, but I don't mean to sound presumptuous because I don't know you enough to do this, so I'm not doing that. But I do want to say to you that your genesis is likely pretty unique. And what I mean by that is that while you were a hardcore, very obedient Catholic, there was a part of you going the whole time, wait a minute.
Well, I'm a natural philosopher. I'm naturally a critical person. Yeah, I'm naturally critical. Yeah.
We have that in common because as I was being indoctrinated and bombarded with stuff as a child, part of me was going, wait, where's the logic? I didn't use the word logic at times. I didn't know the word logic. I had the baby version, whatever that means. But where's the consistency? Something ain't right here. And I didn't sit around just being bothered by what was right. I investigated as a baby. I also wrote off Christianity with confidence at a very young age. I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. I'm not doing this. And I had a grandmother who was a mother of the church. She was an industrial strength Christian who helped me to have something to contrast along with other things. And I'm saying, I'm not going out like that. If that's the way to go, then I will be happily in the other place. So similar to you, I had a very young analytical mind where I wanted to do everything I did to perfection, which is what you did, in my opinion, as a Catholic. You wanted to do it to perfection and do the right thing to make sure you had a certain kind of outcome. But as you got older and more analytical and more wise, you were like, wait a minute. And then other things occurred that made you go, oh, damn this. Well, a lot of people are different in how they develop, including my own sisters, who did not write off the church, who had a whole nother organic way of being that made them turn out differently and have other types of things that drew them, that made them who they are. So my point in all that is that we can't use ourselves as the prototype.
I get it. I get that. You know what I'm saying? I get it. That, there are different ways of perceiving reality, and our way of representing it, thinking about it, and moving and maneuvering around it is a fraction of what it could be, just like anybody else's is. I mean,
and that makes us better teachers when we consider that.
Yeah, we're one incarnation, not the total expression of what humanity can be or what it should be. And I think, You always have to be mindful of that. I know I'm a finite being. I am not the universal, right? I am a particular trying to make sense of my life and trying to live. Uh, I I have a will to be, not the will to power. What I mean by that is I will to exist
I get it.
coextensively and to grow mutually along with others. I
I
don't
get
seek
it.
to dominate other people. I'm not
I got
trying to rule over, or I'm like Curious once said a long time ago. You know, I'm not. I'd rather not be the king. You know, because kings are never understood. You know, what was the verse he said?
I'm in
Because if
here,
I
bro.
was to rule or to govern a certain industry, everyone right now in this room would be in misery. No one would sing along, no one would sing a song, nor get along, because everyone be singing for the king. Am I wrong? So, like, I'm not trying to be a king to the point where I'm ruling over people. I think that black men, and this is my guess about the people that I know about in my space and in my sphere. Black men feel like, damn, we need space to grow. We need rich soil in which to grow. We need an environment that is hospitable to us just as much as any other organism needs that same kind of productive environment, or an environment that is conducive to their growth, nurturance, and their blossoming into what they can be fully as a thriving member of the community. And I feel like at this moment, we're not even close to that, because at every turn, everywhere we are, it's like we got to be the roads that grew from concrete. There's nothing but concrete. It's like Bob Marley said, the concrete jungle. Nothing but concrete.
But
Nothing
see,
but inhospitable terrain. And
but
so,
again, but again, brother, and I really believe this. You have, as I said much earlier in this conversation, for reasons that you know better than anybody else, an analysis and an insight and a perception of things that helps you to understand what we're worthy of, what will be helpful to us, not only individually, but based on an analysis of contrast. Like, wait a minute, we this is what we're going through and what we need. But I'm telling you right now, a lot of black men don't have that clarity.
well, I'm
They
trying
don't.
to provide a context for which they can gain
Me too.
clarity. They
Me
can
too.
feel good about themselves.
Me too.
And I want them to know, just like you want your SGL members, or the members of your community, which I think you coined the phrase,
My
right?
community is your community, brother.
Right. Well, my community is yours as well. You know what I'm
That's right.
saying? Because I feel like we're all men. We don't need to be. You're not trying to force me to be gay or trans or same gender loving. I'm not trying to force you to be straight. I mean, you know
Well,
what I'm saying?
I don't call you straight. That was your word. I don't believe in that word. But
Well,
anyway,
you know, well, you get whatever the case may be. I just want to be myself
words
and not
matter.
be. I don't want to be
Words,
stigmatized because of my sexual preference, or
sure.
or, or, or I don't want to be
Me either.
stigmatized. But another thing I want to get to before we leave, and I know we can't spend a long amount of time on this because we at the 2 hour mark, and I want to thank you for coming in and having a conversation with me to begin with, because there's a lot of people, they like to attach intentionality to people before they even get to know people, and they claim to know what the motivations are that certain people have. Like, some guy made a comment in one of my videos, namely about you, that you're a communist agent hired by the federal government,
Who?
seeking some dude, man. I don't know, man. But
That
he
you were?
basically, huh?
He
Not
said
in the
that you.
chat, not in the chat. But on
Oh,
one of my videos, I made a video. I think I had a conversation with Zakaya, and in the video there was a comment, and the comment was about, oh yeah, I know who Cleo Manago is. Cleo Manago is a communist uh, agent of the federal government seeking to, proliferate queer shit. And I'm just saying, like, I mean, we got to tell the truth. I'm straight no chaser here, man. If that's the shit you saying, it is what it is. Okay.
wait. When somebody does that, it's important to ask them what they're talking about. Don't ignore them. Ask them to break that down and ask them to provide you with sources that make where that came from, and get some and provide some evidence. That
But
must happen.
I get it. But Dr. Manago, I'm just gonna be 100 with you here, man. If I respond to every fucking
I ain't
comment,
talking about everything. I'm talking about
right?
me.
Okay, right. So you can go look at that comment and go ask that motherfucker what he was talking about. But I
Yeah.
think, like, I like to believe that I'm talking to people in good faith. I don't give a fuck. Even if a motherfucker is, I'm not saying that you are. Trust me, I'm not. Okay.
If I was, I would tell you.
Okay. So all I'm saying is, We need to have these kind of conversations, man. Bottom line, if we don't have these kind of conversations, we'll never be able to heal the community that we have, and we'll never be able to stop pointing fingers at each other and deriding each other and ascribing qualities, motivations, and intentions to people that we don't even know about. That's called prejudice, really. Actually, is what it is. When you ascribe qualities to people and characteristics and motivations that you don't even know about, but you think you know about, right? That's prejudice, man. You've already prejudged that individual.
Let me break something down, though, because I want us to be aware of white supremacist strategies or the pathology of it being internalized by Black people. I don't hear about it often, but I've heard on occasion. This is probably the second time this whole year that I've heard this kind of thing. Maybe other people aren't telling me, but there'll be people who will say something about Cleo Manago, who was this and that and the other. And when I asked you to ask them to break it down, you said, well, you can't break down everything. Well, given who you are, given your agenda, which is a rare and important agenda to help heal and repair Black chaos and to create practical problem solving opportunities and conversations with Black folks. If somebody says to me that G with a PhD is really a communist, whatever, I have to make them take responsibility for that, because you ain't just anybody. Ain't a whole bunch
of true that. You're right. I get that. There ain't a whole point understood. Point understood. Point understood.
There's people who actively trying to create a barrier or confidence to people who could actually come together and do some stuff for Black folks. And they could be very successful, because unfortunately, and I'll close this tangent with this because it's so important to me to make this point, we don't do the investigation of people saying things. I built a multi-million-dollar cultural center in Los Angeles once called the Animosity Center. I have another one in the East Coast, that's another story. We still exist. But we had problems because people were putting out rumors that beautiful multi-million-dollar organization was Cleo Manago working for the FBI, Cleo Manago working for whatever. And I created an opportunity for Black people who were about Black people to have jobs and be paid and make a living off of affirming and advancing Black people. And I had a hard time getting people through the door to apply for these jobs because of the rumors. And nobody asked me nothing. That's why I say it's important to investigate, because the rumors were surrounding my name and people were believing them so well, because I'm already a Black man, therefore people are already skeptical anyway. So nobody did any vetting. We got to do the vetting. Now, if at the risk of sounding pompous, I'm gonna say it anyway, but if the rumors are about Joe Blow, who works at the Walmart, okay, cool. But if the rumors about a person who claims to be a social change agent for Black folks, we have to investigate the rumor.
Hey, and that's why I even addressed it in the first place. I could have been like, I'm not going to talk about it, but I wanted to draw it to your attention to say, right, look, we got to stop ascribing qualities, characteristics, and motivations to people until we can actually hear them and actually, like you just said, do the legwork to find out what they're about.
But see, this is a little bit different than what you're saying. Whoever said that to you, it's not ascribing, they're being strategic. This is a strategy. This is a splitting strategy to make sure that there's a conversation that won't occur and that somebody's dismissed. They know they're lying. In most cases, this is a very short story, I promise. I just hired somebody who told me that during the hiring process that they were told to be careful of Cleo Manago. And I gave them an assignment. I said, first of all, I asked them, did you investigate that? Did you investigate the be careful recommendation? They said no. So what I want you to do before I hire you, because this makes a difference to me, is go investigate what be careful meant. Now I'm going to tell you what's going to happen when you go investigate it. You're going to hear crickets. You're going to hear stutters. You probably won't ever get a clear explanation of what be careful meant and what you should be careful about. But you'll go for yourself to find out I might be wrong, but go find out what be careful means. He came back to me and said, are you a psychic? I said, no, I'm not a psychic, but I am a behavioral expert. And I understand the elements of trying to create enough chaos in the Black community that we won't advance and help each other out, and the kind of work that's done to keep us from coming together. I said, so what happened? He said exactly what you said. They were taken aback, first of all, by the question even being reintroduced between the two of us. And they stuttered, and I asked them, okay, be careful. You said this, be careful of what? Well. And I told him, another thing I told him before he went back, I said, I bet you anything, be careful has something to do with me being pro-Black. So go find out. And the guy said, who told him to be careful, well, he's always talking about those Black issues. He's just too militant. I said, there it is. I told you that's what was going on. So I said, so next time you run one of these people that say, be careful of Cleo Manago, fine, ask them to break it down. Ask them to take responsibility for it and deconstruct what they mean.
Okay, gotcha, brother. I mean, hey, we'll do, man. But I would like to have you defend yourself as opposed to me defend you, because I'm just not. Look, I'm getting to know you. You feel me?
I'm not asking you to defend me, though. I want to be real clear. I'm asking you to make them responsibility for what they said, because what they're doing is very irresponsible, and it's not really a personal perspective of me. That person who told my staff person to be careful was trying to create a schism, was trying to create a barrier. And it's unconscious. You know yourself at this point, because you know a lot, that there's Black people who are unconsciously conditioned to be anti-Black.
Oh, yeah. It's like when you got a Black business, they don't want to go there. They'll go all the way. They'll go like all across town to go get it from a white man.
Yeah.
I get it. Like I understand. And you know what? This is the problem we talked about today earlier, man. We are our own worst enemy, man. Sometimes,
but we're not. See, when people say that,
but you know what I mean when I say that. Look, we're compounding to our problem by allowing divisions.
But we're not allowing anything. See, we'll have a conversation later about behavior. It's not an issue of allowance. It's an issue of conditioning. We don't know we're doing this. Part of my work as a behaviorist, I have a model that I created called CTCA, which stands for Critical Thinking and Culture Affirmation, where through exercises and different types of interaction, I help Black people unpack their anti-Black unconscious. And a lot of the stuff that we do, we don't even know we're doing it. It's like it's part of being trapped in the language of English, which is an anti-Black language. You know yourself that, and I got tons of examples, but we don't got a lot of time, so I'm making just one. In the English language, there's no such thing as the phrase Black slavery. There is such thing as the phrase white slavery, which is considered a no-no, and you're not to do that. But the word slavery is already
it's etymologically rooted to whiteness anyway.
Right, but you're being literal and logical and scholarly and academic. Everybody ain't doing that. I'm telling you that in this society, there's no such thing as the term Black slavery, because it's considered by deduction beyond your facts and logic that Black already means slavery. Why are we going to add Black to it? It's kind of like there's no such thing as the word Black trash, because you're already trash. Why be redundant? But there is such thing as the word white trash. So I'm talking about the unconscious implications that last night I was with some other scholars, and one of them kept talking about fair skin. And I said, the skin that you call unfair is the most unfair skin in the world. That's a problematic term because it implies that our skin is unfair. I'm talking about the unconscious impact. Like I don't use the word straight. I use the word heterosexual, because the word heterosexual is what we're talking about. And the word straight, which comes out of drug culture, if you straight, that means you don't take drugs. Well, in this instance, if you straight, that means you're not a homosexual, which means that you're not crooked. So language makes a huge difference in our world map and how we see and think in our psychology. So they make a difference to me, which is why I do SGL don't do gay. Because gay is not a saving grace linguistically and paradigmatically for Black people. It's like white feminism. It's not a saving grace to Black people. It's an interruption of Black people. So I do my best not to interrupt, but to affirm and to be a complement organic Black common sense. Because it's a lack of common sense that got us over here. It's a lack of common sense that got Black mothers wrapped up from a retroactive perspective into to this Black woman's magic thing and ignoring their Black male partners.
And that's and look, having said that, the next time we're gonna come back, I'm gonna have you on the show again whenever you feel like you're ready.
I'm always ready, bro.
Well, we're going to, well, shit, next week then. We're going to talk about patriarchy. I want to talk about patriarchy theory, and I call it fuck daddy theory. Fuck my daddy. That's what I call it. Like the essence of it is fuck my daddy. Now, we can talk about black or white men being oppressive or black men being oppressive, but I think that, you know, the very idea that daddy is inherently evil, inherently needs to be cleaved apart from the family in order to produce safety, that's problematic, man. So, hey, but I do want to thank you for coming into the show, for having the discussion, for having the conversation, and because you didn't know me from a can of paint for real. I mean, you knew me from Facebook, but you never had a conversation with me before. But I appreciate your willingness to have this conversation, and hopefully we can expand the conversation in the future, man.
Absolutely, bro.
So peace out, man. And peace out to all the people out there who donated to the Green Gorilla channel this evening. If they want to find you, Dr. Manago, how can they get in contact with you? Give them some information, the pathways to get information about you.
First of all, again, thank you very sincerely, brother, for being open to having this conversation and having it with integrity and having it with very sincere inquiry about these issues, because it's rare. I don't know if you know how rare it is, but it's very rare. And because it hasn't happened on a macro level, we're still in this chaos and all this internal attack that's exacerbated by white paradigms that white people join, that keeps us at each other's throats and keeps us for not doing what white lesbians and gays and white women did to get Trump in office, to make up for Obama, toward focused white power. White feminists voted for Trump. White lesbian feminists voted for Trump. Now, I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying that he had those kind of voters because white power was on the line and they voted for white power. We need to vote for black power and come together despite our variations and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to thank you, and because what you're doing is part of that recipe, I think, to get beyond variations, or at least engage them so we can become more united. People can find me on Facebook at Cleo Manago. They can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Facebook is at its limit. So if people want to join me or connect with me on Twitter and Instagram, they can find my name and they'll be able to do that. The organization that most describes my work from a conceptual and even scientific basis is the Amasi Center for Black Wellness and Culture. Amasi spelled A like an apple, M like in man, A like an apple, S like in Sam, another Sam, I like important.org, amasi.org. It's the Amasi Center for Black Wellness and Culture. And again, that's not an SGL organization. It's a Black community organization that affirms and engages the Black collective around these issues that you and I discussed today, toward problem solving, critical thinking, and culture affirmation, and critical analysis. The Black Men's Exchange, on the other hand, is an organization, and that's bmxnational.org, that's focused specifically on diverse Black men, including same gender loving men, and Black men who identify in different ways, including heterosexual Black men, because I'm trying to build community among men and deal with this hostility that inspires you to even have this show. We've been doing that work for years. We've even invited Dr. Welsing to our work, which was very interesting in terms of how that went down. So those are the ways that people can find me. I noticed that when you first introduced me, it sounded like something that you got off the internet.
It is.
Yeah, and you didn't know this, so I'm not complaining or blaming. But what bothers me about what's on the internet, and this is strategic by white folks, is that it constantly centers my work around SGL. And SGL is about this much of my work, and Black is the larger context of my work. And there's been people who have changed the SGL focus of me on internet, and in terms of that just being part of the portfolio, not the focus, and they put it back in the SGL, because that's the way they insist on minimizing me, because otherwise they think I'm a threat to white norms. They want me to be a little small SGL person and SGL is not my priority. Black folks are my priority, men and women, with equal levels of consideration regarding what I do. Men are not prioritized over women or women over men, but I am a man. So, and that's how I show up. So I tend to be put in a situation where I'm more surrounded by men in many cases than women, because we operate like that. There's this gender divide that occurs sometimes regardless of sexuality. It occurs among same-gender loving folks as well. But women are just as valuable to me as men. Heterosexual people are just as valuable to me as same-gender loving people. And I don't have a bias toward either community. It's Black.
All right, man. Well, hey, look, I appreciate you for coming in and having a conversation, and hopefully we'll have some more conversations down the pike. So having said that, we're going to sign off. Peace to y'all, man.
Peace to you.
Have a good one, man. It's a Sunday. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.
Yeah. I'm a phenomenon, I shine like Orion. I came in a rap gang to smack it up like Heron, transform it like Megatron. Wait, like Yamatron, most rappers are some peons. I'ma starve them like Ramadan, I'm troublesome. You don't really want no troublesome, cause I pop guns like hood chicks do bubble gum. I been dumb, gon' stay that way till kingdom come. When the sun I'm at, unleash a demon, a Polygon. I'm heavy, son, got more knowledge than Farrakhan, more game than Cap. Karma that bishop named Don Juan, stay lit off some Shandon. Maybe Bacardi Ram, stay great to some Nordstrom. Call me that Dapper Don, more violent than Genghis Khan. The members of Taliban, niggas faker than silicon. Get hit like a .com, like soldiers in Lebanon. I'm bringing that red rum. When I get through with you, son, you gon' think I see rap. I carry weight like a heavyweight. Bake more cakes than patty cake. Watch the fiend salivate. You a lightweight, bantam weight. Better contemplate. If you violate, make you levitate to the pearly gates. I fascinate when I conversate from the show me state where these niggas love to hate and hot murder rate. What a waste. But this flow is just a taste of God's grace. Shining this light in the ugly place. In the prophecy, got more wisdom than Socrates. Philosophies, you don't really want no parts of me. Can't you see? I'm slicker than Mephistopheles, stronger than Hercules, more dangerous than the Damocles. The MCs trying me pretty please. I wait up they white tees, knock them out they wallabies. Now they touch my deliries. But coming up short of the little C's when I break out the killer bees. I study music like Ocasio, hit chicks look like Ashanti. When I'm breaking them off, they yell at odd poppy. You rack rappers is sloppy, you can't stop me with that. We can sorry, copy, malarkey. I'm a monster like Frankenstein, rock harder than Palestine. You slams, dropping dimes, a snake and serpentine. Can't stand to see me glow like Nas with a big shine. All you haters cold in it, cold sores need calamine. But my hot shit like red bricks hitting your head, leave the sour taste up in your mouth like lemon heads, like Simply Red. Wasted some years up in the feds when I touched down. Already red that gave me head. I got higher vision for higher living. I'm highly driven. I'm acting women like it's some sort of sick religion. Driving an Impala, sitting on it, these 20 inches, and they spinning just like the planets in the solar system.
Black country people, over in Africa, down to America. Black country people, we make all the world go round and around, yes. Black country people, up in Canada, down to Jamaica. Black country people, we make all the world go round and